Can we talk about like the stuff that they were saying about women and how lonely it is in a woman's body and that kind of thing? And I think it's an exaggeration, but I think there's some truth to it.
Sure. Like there's a stereotype, I guess, that is maybe an exaggeration of the reality of women in the 1960s, stuck at home raising the kids while the man went to work and did the manly things, and you were home alone.
These are the roles that are defined for you. This is all you get.
Yeah.
Perhaps I could use this as an excuse to go to those far-off planets with little polka-dotted people if necessary, and be able to talk about love, war, nature, God, sex, all those things that go to make up the excitement of the human condition.
I'm Captain James Kirk.
Spock.
Your move, Captain.
Jim Kirk of the Enterprise.
What's going on? I'm James Kirk. These people are my friends and my shipmate. Leave my crew alone.
Out of the question.
How about that?
James Kirk.
It fits like a glove, Captain.
Oh, the bonehead ideas.
Gentlemen, I'm Captain James Kirk. Get out of my chair. Get out of it now.
My greetings and felicitations, Captain. So good of you and your officers to, drop in. Absolutely smashing.
Jolan True, and welcome to Humanist Trek. It's a Star Trek podcast about the humanism in Star Trek. I'm Sarah Ray.
And I'm Allie Ashmead. Wait. We've been Freaky Friday body swapped. Oh no. I wish I had your muscularism because we're going to need it on a hike that we're doing soon. If we could body swap, I'm a old fat lady. Are you kidding me? I'd trade with you today. Anyway, I'm going to need to body swap with you so that I can make it on this hike that we're going to do coming up soon, that I'm desperately trying to segue us into. Allie and I are going to be participating in the Denver Metro Hike for Hope, which is part of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, in an event in June, and we need your help. So first, if you're in the Denver, Colorado area and you want to hike with us for a good cause, come join our crew. I think that would be fun to have some other Star Trek fans to go hike with.
Yeah, totally. And it's on my birthday too, which is awesome.
So come celebrate Allie's birthday with us. Talk Star Trek, hike around this. So this is taking place at Red Rocks.
Yeah.
That's one of the trails there at Red Rocks in Morrison, Colorado. So if you're in the area, if you want to join our team, you go to humanisttrek.com/hike. And that will forward you to the thing where you can sign up to be part of our team and come out and hike with us. But also at that same link, humanisttrek.com/hike, you can donate to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention under our team name on our behalf or on your behalf, however that works. Because we talk, I think, fairly openly with you all on this show about our own mental health journey. And, that the reality of it is that this is something that we as humans deal with. And if mental health care isn't taken care of, that leads us to do drastic things sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Not everybody feels comfortable or has access to a therapist or this or that. And sometimes it's also a cry for help. And so if there's help that can be given, we want to make sure that you get the help you need.
Yeah. I have long said that I believe this is the future that I believe in, that anybody should be able to walk into a clinic anywhere, mental health, physical health, or otherwise, and say, hey, I need help with this thing, and get that help, period, without having to worry about co-pays and do I have insurance and do you accept my insurance and am I a legal citizen in this place? And, I'm afraid to give my personal information over to the hospital because they, there's a lot of reasons. We should be able to just walk into a clinic and get care, period.
Yeah. And also not be embarrassed about it
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with taking care of your mental health. It's just as important as your physical health.
Yep. If you have a cold, if you have the flu,
you take medicine.
yeah. If you have the flu, you go to the doctor and you get a prescription, right? The same thing should apply for our mental health.
Mm-hmm. Period.
And, I think that was very well reflected in Gene's future, right? Gene Roddenberry's vision of what better might be. McCoy wasn't turning anybody away for not having insurance or whatever, right? If you came through his sick bay, you were going to get care. The quality of that care is questionable, but you're going to get it.
Yeah.
Right? There's no class of, you get better care because you can pay more.
But he might call you a couple of names.
He
will take care of you.
Right. Anyway, come join our team. Hike, talk this gibberish nonsense with us that we love to talk about with this show. Go to humanisttrek.com/hike and sign up to be on our team or fundraise with us and support this great cause. Again, that's June 2nd, Allie's birthday.
Do we want to segue into it?
I don't know. How do we turn about this episode? How do we turn about the intro into the episode?
So, Sarah, I'm sorry you're going to have to hike it with your own body. And I'm going to have to hike it with mine.
Well, I guess I'm going to have to hit the stair machine a bit more at the gym. Maybe I can turn about this weight problem that I'm having. I don't know, man. It's Star Trek, the original series, season 3, episode 24, Turnabout Intruder.
Sir, contact with an object. It's moving toward us. No visual contact yet.
Deflectors, full intensity.
Mr. Sulu, yes, Captain. Anything on your scanners?
It's coming at light speed.
Collision course. Visual contact.
Anything, over?
All wavelengths dominated by ionization effects, sir.
All engines full stop.
We're dropped right into a big old mystery this week, right from the first tense musical notes in the score. The Enterprise has responded to a distress call on Camus 2, where scientists are exploring some ruins of a dead civilization. And right away, we meet the expedition's surgeon, Dr. Coleman, and the expedition leader, Dr. Janice Lester.
Apparently, these are two of the survivors that they've come across, but apparently most everyone else is dead.
Dr. Coleman is played by Harry Landers, who had a bunch of guest appearances, but I guess his big run was 71 episodes as Dr. Ted Hoffman on Ben Casey in the 60s. Not a show that I've ever watched.
Nope, never heard of it, actually.
No. And Dr. Lester is played by Sandra Smith, who was on The Guiding Light.
As who?
Julie Conrad Bauer.
Huh. I'm going to have to look that up because I did not miss an episode of Guiding Light back when I was growing up. So I did.
All the classic Westerns, Hawaii Five-0, The Rockford Files. Dr. Lester is laid up in bed with what Coleman claims is some kind of radiation effect, although he doesn't really know anything about what kind of radiation. This dude went to the Leonard H. McCoy Medical School. He didn't know nothing.
It's the radiation. I don't know what kind, though.
Yeah.
But then, so she sort of wakes up, and I did not understand this part here where Kirk says to her, you have to remain absolutely quiet. Those are the doctor's orders, not mine. Well, now that I'm saying it, okay, so maybe Coleman
Maybe it was
told
Coleman's
him
orders
to say that?
Yeah.
What difference does it make being quiet if you've got fucking radiation poisoning?
Right.
Like,
what does that have to do with it? Right.
But just then Spock is picking up some tricorder readings outside their compound, wherever they are. There's some faint life readings a few hundred meters away, and so they need to go out there because they're probably going to die. McCoy, Spock, and Dr. Coleman decide to go out and check it out, and they leave Kirk and Janice together. Kirk moseys up to the bed where she's slaying, and she's not making a whole lot of noise. And we learn that they have a history. They knew each other in Starfleet.
Yeah, they did. They biblically knew each other.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my.
she was quite in love with him, and he in love with her, I guess. But I guess she wanted to be a Starfleet captain, and there was this. I don't know if it was Starfleet that was keeping her from being a Starfleet captain, but she expressed some resentment towards him and towards Starfleet for, you became a captain because I couldn't, and that kind of thing.
I got the feeling as this goes on, because we come back to this a couple points later, I got the feeling that the message was women can't be captains.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was from Starfleet or from him.
I think it was from Starfleet.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
But
anyway,
she blamed him, and she was very, very angry with him.
Kirk wanders around the room looking at the relics and ruins, and he walks up to this stone carving looking thing on the wall. And just as he gets close, Janice pulls out a garage door opener from under the blankets. And when she hits the button, this wall lights up and Kirk freezes. This is a great set piece.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
This was very like Legend of the Hidden Temple again, which I know you're not super familiar with.
I thought when he walked over there, I thought he was going to push in some wall panel and one of the symbols.
Fucking Indiana Jones or some shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's not what happened. And yeah, when she pulls out the remote, she's fine. She's just fine.
We get an even better look at this carved wall thing when Janice gets up and walks over. It seems to be divided into like two halves, and Kirk is standing motionless against the right half, and she joins him on the platform and stands against the left half. Reaches over to this console on the side, flips a switch, and we get a very 1960s Freaky Friday.
Yep.
It's almost like a negative reversal effect. That goes from one to the other.
I don't know how to. You see their images emerging from their own bodies in sort of a negative, and then switching, and then so Kirk goes into her body and she goes into his. So, but
very
how
effective.
else were they? Yeah, I was going to say that was a very effective image of letting the audience know what's happening.
For as much hate as this episode gets, people fucking hate this episode. I don't know if you read any of that. It's up there on the list, I think.
There are some other episodes I hate way more than this.
Yeah.
I didn't have a problem with this one. Too badly.
But despite all of that, I thought Shatner was fucking spectacular in this scene, especially in this scene. If the direction is you are this woman, Janice Lester, in Jim Kirk's body, and Janice Lester is batshit crazy.
And happy. And giggling that her plan is working.
Shatner nailed it. Just so good in this episode.
I agree.
So Jimster.
Is that what we're calling her? Jimster?
What I'm going to call,
Jan
Kirk.
Jan Kirk?
Yeah. Jimster and Jan Kirk. Okay. So listen, I'm a trans person. I have pronouns and names swirling around my life as a concept. And I started typing notes to this episode and I was like, fuck me. Is this okay? So this is a woman trapped in Kirk's body. He, she, which pronouns do we use? Which name do we use? And then I started shipping them and calling them Jimster. And then I kept wanting to call the other one Sarkirk from that other episode.
Yeah, because that's what we did was whenever there was two people inhabiting a body.
I can't keep track of who's who. So it's a good chance that I wrote these wrong in my thoughts.
Well, yeah.
But Jimster appears to be unconscious. Jimster being Kirk in Janice's body. Jan Kirk, Lester in Kirk's body, is evil monologuing. There were some great lines here in this evil monologue.
I love it so after the break, Jan Kirk sort of the woman's body, Janice's body collapses, and Jan Kirk picks her up and was just kind of giddy. And literally, it kind of like throws her on the bed.
Yeah.
And does the evil monologuing.
It's talking about how Kirk should have killed her when he had the chance, but he was too afraid. And now that she's in his body, Kirk won't be afraid to kill. And he's snatched up her scarf, which brings Jimster back to consciousness somehow, I guess. And he's just about to strangle her and says, "Now you know the indignity of being a woman. Believe me, it's better to be dead than to live alone in the body of a woman." And I just thought,
wow.
Whoa. Yeah.
I mean,
for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I want to say more.
I mean,
and
to
know we'll
come
talk
right
about
on out and
this
say it, though,
at
you
the
know,
end.
like,
But I know.
why
yeah.
wouldn't you want to be a woman? Does society treat you poorly or something?
Why? Is there no perks to that, to it? Doug, you think?
Yeah.
There's no perks.
This murder is cut short, though, by sounds of someone approaching. And as Spock, McCoy, and Coleman return, Jan Kirk now sets about cosplaying as Kirk. So, here we go. So now we have Shatner playing Janice Lester, playing Kirk.
Yes.
And it's so
And
good.
he does nail it. There's some subtleties, just real, he doesn't overdo it. And that's what can kill a scene. And he's the subtleties, facial expressions, female mannerisms and stuff like that. And not the Kirk that we know. So it was really cool. And Dr. Coleman has this look on his face, like he knows already that something's up. And he's looking from Jan Kirk to the other one on the bed. And I can't remember the names anymore. He's looking from both of them because he knows something's up.
Yep. Coleman interrupts McCoy as he's trying to talk about treating celebium. Runs over to Jimster's body on the bed. She's dying, and he's just real sus throughout this whole thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I thought at this moment he's in on this whole body swap thing.
I think I did too from the beginning. McCoy's like asking Jim, well, who we think is Jim, did you notice anything unusual while we were gone? And Kirk said, "Oh, nothing at all. She was unconscious the whole time." And Coleman says, "Yeah, she's dying."
So Jan Kirk decides it's time to beam up and get Jimster to sickbay. While I thought this scene was great for the body swap stuff, I thought the fact that Spock didn't have a single line was really odd. Like, I forgot he was even there.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
I
would have expected some comment from Spock. Scotty beams them up, and Coleman is sent off to sickbay with Jimster, and Jan Kirk holds McCoy back to talk about this diagnosis and treatment, and this leads to Jan Kirk telling McCoy about their relationship. Listen, we had this thing back in the academy, and Janice kind of blames Kirk for leaving, like things got serious, and he dipped.
Well, and McCoy tries to kind of help him out there, thinking he's Kirk, saying, you probably were young. Young people do stupid things.
Yep.
Kirk just says, yeah, youth doesn't excuse everything.
In sickbay, Jimster is tossing and turning, delirious, when Jan Kirk rolls in, and we learn that Coleman is 100% in on this. Apparently, Janice sent all those scientists into an area where shielding was weak so that they would die from this celebium poisoning.
That's horrible. And apparently they had been planning this for weeks and weeks, studying the Enterprise and everything about Jim's life, so that they could somehow figure out how to take over. That was like awful. But then they're both accusing each other of murder. It's like, obviously Coleman's accusing her of murder, but she's also accusing him of murder because he could have treated all these people and he didn't.
As for Jimster, which I have to remind myself is Kirk in
this isn't
Janice's
gonna work.
body. I have no fucking clue what to call them.
No. I've already,
As for Janice's body, Coleman is going to have to dispense with it. McCoy and Chapel come in, surprised to see Kirk there. Jan Kirk says he thought his presence would quiet Dr. Lester, but it seems to have had the opposite effect.
She's going, on the bed.
Oh my.
She can't seem to make any words. out, but she's just writhing in pain or whatever seems like pain.
McCoy and Coleman get into a doctor fight here. Coleman is like, look, this delirium is a side effect of the radiation. McCoy's tests show no signs of internal radiation damage, though. In fact, he says Lester could be suffering from a phaser stun, as far as he can tell. So we're starting to get the indication now that she's not as maybe delirious as they are claiming that she is. Right?
Yeah.
McCoy's got nothing on the scans. She's perfectly normal otherwise. This doctor fight escalates to the point where Jan Kirk takes McCoy off the case and gives Coleman full responsibility. This doesn't go down without royally pissing off McCoy, though. Jan Kirk reminds Coleman, winky wink, that you were about to administer a sedative, and McCoy yells about that. She doesn't need a sedative. But of course, they have to keep Jimster from fully coming around and spoiling the whole thing. This was another fun, transition effect that I enjoyed in this one, where they do the sort of fuzzy shots back and forth between the Freaky Friday thing happening.
Mm-hmm.
They do that a few times in this episode, and I really like that.
Yeah, and that whole flashback thing was pretty cool.
It takes some coercing to get Chapel to administer the sedative, and as she slips away, she says, "Oh no, am I really losing command of the Enterprise? No. Oh no.
Oh no.
Bad dream, bad dream."
So this was the internal evil monologue, because Kirk's body goes to the bridge, and it's really Janice's thoughts, really. She's talking about how they're going to go ahead and go to their next mission on their previous course, and she's in command now. And she spent years studying every single detail of the ship's operation, and nobody's gonna. I know, really,
Creepy.
right? And she's like, nobody's gonna know. No one will be suspicious. I know everything about the ship, and she feels like she belongs in that captain's chair, and this is due her.
Have you ever seen an overly confident performer?
Yeah,
that you give them a little too much and they're like, "Oh, I'm God's gift," and they fail hard. Janice is about to fail hard. And this comes in a series of tests, the first of which is Kirk's body strutting onto the bridge, and he tentatively tries some commands. First asks Chekhov to, what's our course, and orders Sulu to go to warp 2.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm going to nitpick here. I don't know if you noticed this or not. Kirk orders warp 2. We hear the engine sound starting to rise, and the camera cuts back to a wide shot, and the stars are not moving.
Not moving. I did notice that.
Fuckers. But this Kirk seems to have fooled Chekhov and Sulu, who happily changed course to Benicia, which is some colony in the opposite direction, I guess.
Right. It's going to take them 2 days to get there at the current speed. And even though maybe they gave him a funny look, they're like, okay, I mean, why would they not? Because he is the captain and they don't know anything different.
Yeah.
But then that's when Spock chimes in and say, this is going to delay our work at Beta Arigai, which is where they were supposed to be going. But Kirk's body says, well, it can't be helped. We have to take Dr. Lester to this Benician colony. But Spock says, well, you could take him to Starbase 2, which, we could get there in the same time. And
which
they have
is
more
on the way.
It's on the way, dude.
Mm-hmm.
And it also is more advanced because this Benicia colony is very primitive. And he's like, Spock's thinking, how can they help her? Because Starbase 2 has more advanced medicine.
This woman in Kirk's body, she walked into a logic fight without a weapon.
Yeah.
Because they keep this back and forth going on. And at every turn, she's got an argument of why we can't go to Starbase 2, why we have to go to Benicia. And every time Spock's like, actually, actually. And the ending of this is what shines the light of stupidity on Janice Lester. in the brightest possible way as Spock. So they go back and forth, right? We could go to Starbase 2, which is on the way, but that'll take an extra day than if we had gone to this other place, this other way. And Spock, at the end of the thing, Spock's like, you could just drive faster.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to Starbase 2 in plenty of time. I love that the final blow of this battle was just drive faster, you idiot.
From Spock.
From Spock, yeah.
And the woman in Uhura's seat, her name is Lysa. I don't know where Uhura was on this episode.
They called her Lisa later.
Lisa?
Yeah.
All right. And she's listening, watching the tennis, the logic tennis going back and forth between the two of them. And so she's like, so should I tell Starfleet about a change of plan? And Kirk says, no. As I said, us getting there is merely going to be delayed. We're going to Benicia, whatever. And he starts getting sort of agitated and starts to unravel, if you will.
This woman's voice reminded me of Annie Potts in Ghostbusters.
Lisa,
yeah. Like she's sitting at comms.
You sound bored.
Ghostbusters, what do you want?
Shall I advise Starfleet of command of the change of plans?
Exactly.
Like
USS Enterprise, what do you want? We got one. This scene ends as Kirk's body agrees to notify Starfleet about the delay in their next mission. But this was enough of a poor performance that Spock seems to be on the scent now, which is underscored by a big old raised eyebrow as Kirk orders an increase to warp 6 and leaves the bridge. Down in Kirk's quarters, McCoy is making an appeal. With no crazy women to treat, he spent some time digging into Coleman's records. And apparently, Coleman was removed from his post of CMO of a ship for administrative incompetence and flagrant medical blunders.
Wow. How is McCoy still a doctor?
That's what I'm saying.
But also, I wanted to point out, too, like, when McCoy comes into Kirk's quarters, he's filing his nails.
Yes.
And I'm like, another little subtlety thing.
Yep.
Like, our Kirk would not do that.
Nope.
Would not be filing his nails. But just, I love the subtlety of it.
It appears that McCoy is also starting to pick up on the scent because he orders Kirk to submit for examination based on emotional instability and erratic mental attitudes since returning from that planet.
Again, Jan Kirk sort of starts to show her true colors because she gets a little rattled and she says something like, "You'll never make that stick," and you know what I mean. And that was like a little bit too defensive.
Mm-hmm.
But then he says, "Any fool can see why you're doing this," and McCoy's just like, "You know what? This is Starfleet regulations. I'm just gonna let Starfleet be the judge." Kirk's body gets a call from the bridge, and Sulu calls up and says that Starfleet wants some additional details on the explanation of why they're changing course.
So Kirk heads to the bridge, ending this argument for now. Back in sickbay, Jimster is coming around again and noticing that this isn't quite the right body, starts calling out for Dr. McCoy, but Dr. Coleman comes instead. And we finally get to see the other side of this coin. That is Sandra Smith portraying James Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
Chapel comes in and Jimster pleads with her to bring Spock and McCoy to sickbay, insisting I am not Janice Lester.
Of course, Coleman tells Chapel that she's delusional and the paranoia has been developing for 6 months. I mean, he's not wrong. But he does say that the radiation is, making it work and she needs to be kept sedated. So we got to figure out a way to try to keep her quiet.
And Chapel she buys that story kind of hook, line, and sinker and goes to prep another sedative. Alone, then, Jimster goes to look at herself in the mirror. And again, we get flashbacks to that Freaky Friday body swap into the commercial.
Back in sickbay when, what are we calling her? Jim.
Jimster.
When
Which
Jimster
is
wakes
Kirk,
up,
Jim, Kirk in Lester's body.
yeah.
Jimster.
When Jimster wakes up, she's tied down. I'm like, okay. But Chapel is in there, and being typical Kirk, he's, turning on the charm for Chapel, and I must have sounded pretty mad to you before. Chapel's like, no worries, and he says, I'm fine now. I just want to see Dr. McCoy, and that's against Dr. Coleman's orders. So what about Spock? Can I see him?
She says, how about a visit by that very kind Mr. Spock? And Chapel's like, slow your roll, bitch. That's my man.
I know, right? That's my man.
Chapel spills the beans here that they're going to this Benicia colony to drop off Lester before proceeding to the rendezvous with the Potemkin. She offers a drink to Jimster, and he takes it. And after Chapel leaves, she throws back the drink, smashes the glass, and uses it to cut the seatbelt strap holding her to the bed.
In the other room, McCoy is talking to Spock about Jim's weird behavior and hoping that the test can pinpoint what the fuck is wrong, whatever the fuck is wrong with him. Spock agrees that his behavior has been just aberrant, and they're talking about it throughout the ship. Everybody's sort of noticing him coming unraveled.
So they've decided whatever it is that's happening is most likely mental and had to have happened in the short time that he was alone with Dr. Lester on the planet. So they're going to split up. McCoy is going to go do Kirk's exam, and he's prepared to use his CMO veto power if necessary. They do this a few times where they point out that, the check and balance on the captain is that the chief medical officer can pop in and say, you're unfit for duty. And, that limits the captain's ability to go mad like this. And he's prepared to use that veto power. Meanwhile, Spock is going to go meet with Dr. Lester and see if she has any information to share. Jan Kirk arrives, followed not long after by Jimster, and she's desperate. She calls out Spock and Bones. And I thought that was another, that was a choice, calling him Bones to signal to us that, hey, that's actually Kirk in there.
How would she know? She just met them. How would she know to call them Bones of all,
But she's backed out into the hallway where Jan Kirk knocks her out with a karate chop.
Christ. I mean, she didn't get the words out of her mouth. And have you ever seen Kirk do that to a woman who wasn't trying to attack him?
No.
But yeah, that was, what do you call that? What is it? Police brutality. I mean, that was, what do you call it? Something excessive use of force.
Yes.
You karate chopped her right in the hallway.
Listen, some of the girls Kirk's been with, they like an excessive use of force.
Oh my.
But yeah, I'm like, damn. And then McCoy's like, Jim, Jesus. And he's like, well, she could have killed somebody. Sorry. It cracked me up so hard. And he's like, he calls for security and they take her. He tells them to put her in an isolation room. Mm-hmm. She hadn't even done nothing. Sorry. I don't know why that's cracking me up. So put her in isolation, put a 24-hour watch on her, and nobody can talk to her.
Even in this day and age, you think about who might be trying to silence you, and if you're being silenced, why that might be.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're not allowed to talk to my family, right? Think about you're in a relationship that ain't so great, and he's limiting who your friends are and how much time you can spend with them, and whether you can be alone with your friends and all that control shit.
Mm-hmm.
This isolation and control, really, really red flag for me.
Yeah. You've got something to hide. That's what that means.
Yep. Spock quickly gets down to Lester's isolation room, and he talks his way past the guards, despite Kirk's order that no one be allowed to talk to her. And this UC Redshirt guy goes inside with him. That's not going to end well for UC Redshirt guy, I'm sure, but
So they switch back to the exam room where McCoy is giving Kirk's body the exam, and they have that machine that we haven't seen in a while where you basically do a Stairmaster upside down while you're laying on your back on a wall. And so he's doing that with no shirt on.
Of course.
and then McCoy says that's enough, and he can get up, and he says he's in the pink, which is a good thing.
What?
Oh my.
And this is where the podcast train derailed. In the pink.
As far as his health is concerned, he's in the pink.
Oh my God.
Which everything, metabolic rate, liver, kidneys, all that stuff is great.
Okay, imagine you're in the writer's room and they're like, okay, we need some medical terminology, word association as fast as you can, name medical words. And what they came out with was Robiani dermal optic. That's the name of this test. Dermal meaning skin, optic meaning vision. Okay.
Robiani is some Italian guy. I have no idea. Yeah. He's physically fine, but there's one more test, and it's this test where it's going to test his emotional structure.
Whatever that is.
Yeah.
And apparently there's like, when you join the military here, they do one of these tests as a baseline. So that if you go half crazy in the middle of your 5-year tour, they can run this test again and compare the new versus the old and see if it's changed in any way. And this thing should have set off all the alarms, right?
Yeah.
This test should have been the thing to detect, like, oh, that's not the right energy signature or whatever.
Brain waves or something, because they've done that kind of thing before. But
yeah.
Before we get the results, we switch back to Janice's isolation room with Spock and the UC standing by. And apparently Janice's body has told Spock everything. And he's pondering over this complete life entity transfer with this, whatever this device was. Janice's body, really Kirk, says, yep, that must be what happened. But Spock doesn't know of any sort of thing that's ever happened in the galaxy. Just because I haven't seen it, that means it can't exist, you know. But Janice Kirk, says, yep, it's got to be, it's the truth. I'm telling you the truth. And then they switch back to the exam room where Kirk is doing some weird acting with his arms and with some lights being shined on him, and then switch back to Janice's room.
What do you do when you're trying to convince someone that you know them? You tell some old stories about, those old times back in the day in college when we used to do this dumb shit. Come on, you remember that? We had a good time with that. And that's what Jimster does. But her stories are all on the record. The time Spock saved Kirk from interphase in the Tholian web. The time the Vians of Minera demanded that they let Bones die in that episode, The Empath. She could have watched any of those episodes and known that information. This is one of those you need to listen. You have a tattoo that I have seen, but nobody else knows about, because we used to be close back in the day.
I'm surprised that I was waiting for them to pull something out, like something between just the two of them and the audience, because we know that there's those moments.
There's only one foolproof way to know for sure: a Vulcan mind meld. So Spock fingerbangs her and now believes her claims, but that won't be enough evidence to prove it to anyone else. And
right.
That was a great argument. Like, this is kind of that I've had a spiritual experience and that proves to me that a God exists, but your personal experience is not evidence for anyone else to believe that the God exists. That argument against fallacy.
So Spock is going to try to take her out of there. And Galloway, like the red shirt, is like, no, I'm sorry. You can't leave.
Of course, this calls for another classic. The Vulcan neck pinch.
Yeah, but I love the fake he did. He did a fake.
Yeah.
Galloway thought, like, he sort of knew that it was coming. He knew that Spock was going to try to neck pinch him. So he kind of sidestepped it or whatever, but then Spock turned around and does it with the other hand. And I'm like, oh my, it was like, yes. So he neck pinched him, but just before he did, he yelled security guard. And then there was one guy still outside the door.
Meanwhile, McCoy was unable to find anything wrong with Kirk. And while they're talking about this, a call comes in. Dr. Lester attempted escape, so off everyone runs to Lester's room. Spock drops the second guard with a neck pinch just as everyone comes running, and he explains that they will not offer physical resistance. And I thought, hell yeah, logic battle, here we go. Like, to specifically say, will not offer physical resistance, I thought this is going to be a mental resistance.
But then Jan Kirk makes an announcement that says all personnel, Spock is under arrest because he's conspired with this Dr. Lester to take over the ship. And they're going to have a hearing, an immediate hearing. Like, whenever have they done that? To consider the charges of mutiny.
It's night court. We're in court is in session, and
I thought you were doing the dun, 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 dun.
Oh, that's a good one too.
Doom doom.
In the courthouse, Scotty is questioning Spock, and as Spock predicted, his mind meld evidence is not sufficient. And I don't know that I agree with this. You come in with like crystals and Reiki and tarot cards, sure, that shit's not evidence. But in this universe, we know that Vulcans can do this mind meld thing. It's a legitimate thing. It's not some like weird spiritual thing, man.
Yeah.
Like, I think that should count for something. I think they should all trust Spock with his mind meld.
Then the episode would have been over.
Of course.
So we got to drag this out. It's the last episode.
Spock argues the real witness they should be examining is Dr. Lester herself. The one who should be the real subject of this investigation is kept locked away in isolation. Wonder why that would be.
Where is Coleman? Like, why isn't his ass in here?
And of course, Jan Kirk argues against this. You know, she's dangerously insane after all. But Spock insists, and security is sent to bring Lester in. Meanwhile, Jan Kirk turns to McCoy to share his findings. Kirk seems to be in perfect health, physically and emotionally. Spock says he's disappointed that they have yet to find evidence to support his position so far. He's still looking. And right on cue, in comes UC Redshirt, Dr. Coleman, and Jimster. But curiously, Jim Kirk dismisses Coleman. Why didn't they keep his ass in the courtroom?
Well, I mean, I can only guess. Well, Janice was like, let's get him out of here because he's probably going to break.
Right.
So that was the only thing I could think of. But she did say, you know, if we need you, we'll call you if you're required.
There was a line of questioning in this scene that felt like scene stretching to me. Like, they make so much a big deal about distinguishing the difference between I am Captain Kirk and whatever makes Kirk a unique individual is trapped inside Dr. Lester's body and vice versa. And like, it just seemed to go on and on and on with irrelevant dialogue.
Right. Like when Janice was like, I am the body of
I am one with the body.
I'm the body.
I am one with the body. Anyway, Jan Kirk continues the questioning. Jimster asserts that this was an attack by Dr. Lester using alien equipment discovered on Camus 2 in order to gain power she didn't deserve. But most of all, she wanted to kill James Kirk, a man that once loved her. But her intense hatred of her own womanhood made life with her impossible. This is the second time that we've heard this hatred of her womanhood bit. And I wondered at this point, I hoped that would pay off in some meaningful way, but it did not.
No.
Spoiler.
But I mean, I get what they were going for.
Yeah.
So this was a woman who was bitter because if she was a woman, she couldn't do certain things and she was resentful.
Yeah. Spock asserts that the issue here is whether or not this Freaky Friday thing is believable. And Spock's like, Your Honor, I submit into evidence most of the previous episodes of Star Trek, the original series, as examples of us running into shit that seems to be impossible until we run into it, and it turns out to be very much possible. This crew has seen some shit. And Jan Kirk turns this back on Spock real hard.
Always. I can't even tell you how many times they've done this to Spock. Is they say that, okay, well, if Kirk is removed from captain, guess who gets to be captain? It's you, Spock. And there's your motive right there. You know, that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
And so somehow it all turns out to be Spock's fault.
And Spock's like, again, I present into evidence the most of the previous episodes of the Star Trek, the original series, where it has been made abundantly clear over and over again that I am not interested in command.
No.
Nobody would believe that that's a motive of Spock's. So Spock doubles down. He says, I shall not withdraw a single charge that I have made. You are not Captain Kirk. You have ruthlessly appropriated his body, but the life entity within you is not that of Captain Kirk. You do not belong in charge of the Enterprise, and I shall do everything in my power against you. And of course, we're in court, so everything's been recorded. And Jan Kirk's like, could the court recorder please replay the last two sentences? And she replays that last bit and declares victory for Spock is a mutineer.
Spock says, you know what? I stand by what I said. And Jan Kirk is kind of starting to lose it. And she's like, see, I told you it's mutiny. This is deliberate. And he's like, you heard it, McCoy. You heard it, Mr. Scott. And he's just really weirdly triumphant and he's coming unraveled. He wants an immediate vote by everybody. They're going to take a recess. But after that recess, everybody has to vote on whether or not Spock and her are guilty.
Out in the hallway, the jury is not unanimous. Scotty is certain this is a kind of hysteria, and he believes Spock's logic, despite it not being very scientific.
Mm-hmm.
And McCoy agrees with that part at least, but he's worried that Starfleet Command is only going to care about what the test results say, because that is the scientific data that will be available, which shows Kirk to be a model of health. Scotty's like, okay, listen. Let's say you vote with me and we free Spock. What do you think the captain's going to do? And the answer is obvious. The captain would never accept that. So that's the plan. We vote, captain goes berserk, then we take over the ship. And McCoy's like, hold on, you're talking about mutiny. And Scotty says, aye. But is it mutiny if for them to vote Kirk out of power? Or does mutiny have to be like violent? I don't know.
I thought mutiny was, if they're voting, then it's legal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all above board. Mutiny, I think you're right. It's violence. It's a group of people, a crazy mob or an angry mob saying, let's take over. That's what mutiny is, I thought.
So back in the courtroom, Jan Kirk orders Lisa to replay McCoy and Scotty's mutiny conversation from the corridor.
This motherfucker is taping people right and left when they don't know it. And I'm like, what do you call that? It's entrapment.
That's a future you got to think about, though, and I had to know this because of a situation that I had at a place that I worked with an HR issue. Y'all look up the laws in the state that you live in. For those of you who are here in the States, every state runs some different laws. But here in the state of Colorado, we are a one-party consent state, which means I can videotape you and I do not have to have your consent because my consent counts.
Yeah.
So,
which I'm glad.
Some places require two-party consent, and I'm glad that ours is not.
Yeah, I have recorded some phone calls that I will keep until I die because it will come back to help me at someday.
Yep.
So yeah. In this case, this tape looks really bad for Scott and McCoy because he basically played that whole conversation, or at least the end part of it, where they
The
said,
mutiny
we're talking
part.
about mutiny.
Yeah.
And then Scotty says, yeah, we are. Let's vote.
Yep.
And so that looks really, really bad for them.
But
And
his cheese is like completely off the cracker now because he's yelling and screaming and very obviously not acting like Kirk, sentences them to death. And this is the point where Chekhov and Sulu are like, hang on, something doesn't seem right with this guy.
I know they've been sitting in the room the whole time and they were totally okay with everything until they said sentenced to death. And then they're like, wait, death penalty is forbidden in Starfleet. We don't do that anymore.
So Chiku and Sulu are ordered back to their posts, and Limley, the red shirt guy, ordered to take Scotty and McCoy off to the brig. Sulu and Chekhov have a quick conversation back on the bridge about Kirk giving execution orders, and now they're prepared to fight Jan Kirk. And Jan Kirk arrives on the bridge and orders Lisa to have every section send a representative down to the hangar deck to witness the execution.
Okay. Yeah,
this guy is not Kirk. Like,
egomaniac.
It's becoming more and more obvious. They're coming within scanning range of Benicia now, and Jan Kirk declares that Benicia will be the place of internment following the executions. During this, Jan Kirk gets more and more emotional, and that just crescendos as Sulu and Chekhov remove their hands from the consoles, defiantly refusing orders.
And Jan Kirk is like, you will obey my orders, and he is flipping out. But then at the same time, he starts having some sort of physical convulsion. But then they flash back to Janice's body in the brig with Spock and McCoy and Scotty standing around her, and she has some sort of fit as well. And just for a second, we see like their image come out of their body. I guess no one else saw that. I guess it was just something for the audience.
It looked to me like Spock was finger banging her.
Yeah,
because
she had her head. Yeah, and yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
He had his finger on her neck and head, and her head was thrown back. So maybe he was what caused it.
And it seems like this effort at least demonstrated that maybe there is a way that they can be swapped back somehow. On the bridge, Jan Kirk storms off of the bridge, obviously understanding what is happening, and he goes down to Dr. Coleman in the lab for help. But Coleman says the only way to ensure this Freaky Friday doesn't reverse is to kill the body of Janice Lester. Jan Kirk must execute Jimster.
She can't do it. She's like, I can't.
You got to do it for me.
Yeah. But he won't murder for her. He said, no, I'm not going to murder for you.
She's like, look, if he doesn't die, then both of us be exposed as murderers for what we did on that planet back there. Like, is that enough motivation for you to go kill this guy for me?
Apparently so, because he arms himself with a hypo spray and a phaser.
They arrive at the brig, and Jan Kirk announces that they will all be moved to separate cells to prevent any further plotting. Starting with Dr. Jimster. But Spock distracts Jan Kirk just enough for Jimster to resist Dr. Coleman, and he flails up against the wall, weirdly, as the Freaky Friday effect plays again, interspersed with shots of the original Freaky Friday incident on the planet. This is a great effect. I loved this.
Yeah. And so they basically switch places back into the bodies where they're supposed to be. Janice, I can finally call her by her name. Coleman has her.
She seems to me like she's overcome with grief at this failure of hers for the plan to fail. She says, I've lost to the captain. I've lost to James Kirk. I want you dead. I want you dead. I want you dead. And if you say it 3 times, it's going to happen. Oh, I'm never going to be the captain. Never. And yeah, she goes over to Coleman, who like scoops her up into his arms, and apparently he loved her, which wasn't really made clear until this point. But,
well, I mean, that's why I was thinking, he had to have to murder for someone. You've got to love them or something.
Some motivation.
Yeah. But she just kind of broke it was definitely a mental break there at the end.
So Coleman offers to care for her, and he and McCoy help her back to sickbay. That leaves Kirk, Spock, and Scotty for chair chat in the hallway this week. As Kirk says, her life could have been as rich as any woman's. If only. If only. Off to the first animated adventure.
Yeah, goodbye, the original series. Oh.
Boy, I'm sure glad that's over with.
I'm happy the affair is over.
Me too.
A most annoying, emotional episode.
Yeah, but you know, I learned something today.
When dreams become more important than reality, you give up travel, building, creating.
One jealous god, if all this makes a god.
By sparing your helpless enemy, who surely would have destroyed you, you demonstrated the advanced trait of mercy.
Frankly, I was rather dismayed by your use of the term half-breed. You must admit, it is an unsophisticated expression.
What were your thoughts on this one?
Well, goodness. I mean, consent. You can't take over someone's body without their consent. That was just...
Haven't we seen this before? No, I don't know if it was a body swap or a takeover, but because they definitely talked about like how rare this kind of thing is. Is that what I wanted to say? Body swapping? Yeah, like this is something so rare, like it's hardly believable that it could happen. But I feel like we've done it on another episode.
Sarkirk and the three
bulbs. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
That was one, and then there was another one. I just don't remember which one.
That's a perfect example. Absolutely.
But yeah.
And yes, and so because of those crazy experiences that they've all been through, this kind of shit should not be a shock to them. Anyway, I wanted it to be more about why women can't be starship captains.
Gender equality.
Fucking address that one. Because that's some bullshit. And, you know, that had to be the network, right? Because Gene was very much for, like, he tried to have the first officer be a woman, and they threw a goddamn fit about it.
Yeah.
So.
But, I mean, I like the fact that they called attention to it. This is space. This is the future, and she should be mad, but not kill someone mad, but
right.
But yeah,
and put that like it was jealousy and rage and this desire for power, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was Starfleet's policy that was wrong. It's not like Kirk personally put the dark mark on her and was like, "You can't ever become a captain now." The League of Captains agrees. It was a Starfleet policy, to my understanding.
Yeah.
So
but
she had this anger very misplaced.
Yeah, it was a misplaced anger towards him as being a man, and the fact that he had something that she wanted. But then can we talk about like the stuff that they were saying about women and how lonely it is in a woman's body and that kind of thing? And I think it's an exaggeration, but I think there's some truth to it.
Sure. Like there's a stereotype, I guess, that is maybe an exaggeration of the reality of women in the 1960s, stuck at home, raising the kids while the man went to work and did the manly things. And, you know, you were home alone. Is that, you know,
what's the payoff there? What's the perk?
Right.
These are the roles that are defined for you. This is all you get.
Yeah.
And I guess like, and you mentioned the last thing was the power thing, the quest for power, which is always a big theme in any of these episodes. And like having the quest for power isn't really about the power itself, but it's more about filling some sort of missing thing inside you, like a hole or some sort of deficiency. And for her, it was wanting to prove that she was just as good as any man and wanting to have some sort of control over her own destiny.
Right. How different would this episode have been if the audience didn't see the body swap? If part of the discovery of the episode was us figuring out what had happened to Kirk and Lester, wouldn't that have been, I think that would have been a better treatment on it. You know, oh man, Captain Kirk is really acting kind of weird. What the fuck is going on with that guy? And then
that would have been a great reveal at the end.
Right?
Oh, and or whenever.
Or whenever,
But I think we would have been like when he had his little subtle things, like filing his nails,
Yeah.
or just his subtle mannerisms that slightly changed, I think it would have been, that would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, let's pitch it to next week's episode. What will be our final original series episode. We will be having on two of our patrons, Sarah D. and Russell, who have been longtime supporters of the show. They have agreed, quite foolishly, very likely, to come play a game that we're going to call Trekword, which is similar to Password, but with Star Trek words. So we're going to play a fun game for the end of the series this time, and we'll see how that goes. And if it's a hit, if it works, maybe we'll do that like once a month for funsies. I don't know. We'll see. At the right Patreon level, I'll do damn near anything. And on that note, we'd like to thank all of our patrons.
Let's get right to business.
Fine, I'm authorized to pay an equitable price. Federation has invested a great deal of money in our training. They're about due for a small return.
Listen, we pay our percentages. We're entitled to a little service for our money, huh?
Is this the way your citizens do business? Their right of petition?
They pay their percentages and the boss takes care of them.
Is there anything else?
We especially want to thank our founding admirals. A special thanks to Russell, Allie, Peter, Sarah, and Sherry.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for your support. Listeners of Humanist Trek at Tanagra, the podcast, It's Humor in Laughter, Dathon on the Patreon Sea.
Shaka, when the reviews fell. Kahlo, his pledge at Patreon.
Humanist Trek, their content wide. Darmok and Jalad at Patreon. Pledge with arms wide.
Mirab, with your support, your laughter, Temba, his arms open.
Our admirals at Patreon. Russell at the Race of Natara. Ali, her arms with fists open. Peter and Sarah at Lunga. Sherry with sails unfurled.
Patreon.com/humanisttrek, where laughter flows. So Koth, in joyous unity.
I assume you're loitering around here to learn what efficiency rating I plan to give your cadets.
Trainees, to the briefing room. Is that all you gotta say? What about my performance?
Aren't you dead?
I don't believe this was a fair test of my command abilities. There was no way to win.
There's no correct resolution. It's a test of character.
Now, what is that supposed to mean?
I am understandably curious.
May I ask you a question?
Who's been holding up the damn elevator?
All right. Let's bring Becca back in for the exciting answer to this week's Starfleet Academy Cadet Challenge for Turnabout Intruder. Remind us all what the question was for Turnabout Intruder.
This episode was originally scheduled to broadcast on March 28th, 1969, but it didn't air until June 3rd. What event coverage preempted the original run?
I think I said something about announcing that we're going to war, which I now know is incorrect. And Allie said...
It wasn't a space shuttle or anything.
Oh, yeah, it was a shuttle launch?
I only wrote Vietnam War, so I don't know.
Okay.
Did you guys...
We were both wrong.
Incorrect.
What's
the right answer?
It was... Do you know what it is now?
I do know what it is
bitch.
now.
I don't.
It was for special network coverage of the death of Dwight D. Eisenhower.
I wouldn't. No, I didn't know that.
That's not what I thought it was.
Oh, what do you think it was going to be?
There was a nuclear test.
A nuclear test?
A nuclear test.
Nuclear weapon?
Oh my God. Nuclear. Anyway, we didn't get anything right. So no points to us, but that's all right. Next week, we will be having our special original series season finale episode where we're going to reflect on Star Trek, the original series, and play some fun games with our patrons. The following week, we will be beginning the animated series. And have you watched ahead at all?
I did watch sort of the first episode, like part of it, and it was just nice to hear the voices are still there, even though it's, animated.
Right.
Well, it wasn't bad.
I have not started it yet. I thought I should just watch, because they're short episodes. I should just watch the whole damn thing and then go back and start doing notes for the show.
Oh, we should do that.
Yeah.
I'll watch it with you.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So then our question for the very first episode of Star Trek, the animated series, Season 1, Episode 1, Beyond the Farthest Star, the Enterprise finds a deserted starship orbiting a dead star. We've been here before. They roll up, there's a ship floating around this planet, and all the people on it have turned into crystal meth.
Or they're just not there.
This is a rerun. Okay, what's our question for Beyond the Farthest Star?
I figured I'd go with a general question about the series since it's the first episode.
And we won't get it right either, but okay.
No. Maybe not. Leonard Nimoy almost refused to join the cast of this series. Do you know why?
Why did Nimoy almost refuse to join the cast? They weren't going to pay him enough. That's my guess. My guess is going to be pay.
It's a cartoon, though. I mean, how much you going to get back then for a cartoon?
Right? I have no idea.
All they needed was his voice. I don't know. I have no idea.
Well, maybe it was something to do with the credits. They were going to credit, starring William Shatner and also Leonard Nimoy, and he wanted double billing as a star of the show. I don't know. I'm sticking with pay.
Maybe he was worried he'd have to do some weird voice or something, and something other than his normal voice. I don't know. I'm like literally throwing shit at a wall to see if it sticks. I have no idea.
All right. Well, you know how to play along. Head over to your social media, share this episode with the hashtag Starfleet Challenge, and tell us your guess. We'll pick out a winner. In 2 weeks, we'll be starting Star Trek, the animated series, Season 1, Episode 1, Beyond the Farthest Star.
Diftor hech smoosma.
Kapla.
Humanist Trek is available wherever you replicate your podcast. Follow us on all the social medias at Humanist Trek. Become a patron at patreon.com/humanisttrek. Open hailing frequencies to podcast@humanisttrek.com and visit our website, humanisttrek.com. Humanist Trek is a production of Sarah Austin Media.